Now we are at the whiteboard and we are going to practice figuring out chord symbols, both functional chord symbols and root quality chord symbols. Now in order to do this, we're going to follow these steps. First, we're always going to figure out what the root is. Then we're going to identify the quality of the chord. And then we are going to account for inversions and adjust the chord symbols accordingly. Let's start with this first question down here. We're in D major. There's an A, a D, and an F sharp. Now I need to figure out what the root is. So I'm going to write these notes down here. A, D, and F sharp. Now, these are not stacked in thirds. A to D is a fourth and D to F sharp is a third. So I need to rearrange this and put it into thirds. If I put this A over here, now it's in thirds, which means D must be the root. So D is the root of this chord. Now looking down here, we have to ask ourselves if it's a major, minor, diminished, or augmented. I know it's a major chord because this is a major third and this is D to A is a perfect fifth. That's the formula for major triads. And now, what inversion is it in? A was the bottom note. So this chord is actually in second inversion. Now I need to take all this information and represent it in chord symbols up here, both a functional chord symbol and a root quality chord symbol. Let's start with the root quality chord symbol since it's easier. Root quality. The root is D, so I write a capital letter D. The quality is major, so I don't need to write anything beside that capital letter D. It's implied that it's major. But since the A is on the bottom, I do need to account for the inversion. Since it's in second inversion, I'm going to write D over A. And that's the correct root quality chord symbol. Now what about the functional chord symbol? Remember, the functional chord symbol depends on what the key that we are in is. So since we're in D major and the root is D, and D is the first note of D major, this must be the tonic triad. So I'm going to write a Roman numeral 1, and because it's a major triad, I'm going to make sure that it's a capital letter Roman numeral 1. Now, how do we represent second inversion beside within a functional chord symbol? You remember at the piano, now we write a 6 in level 8. So it's a tonic triad of D major, but because it's in, actually, I made a mistake. We write 6-4. That was close. 6-4. So it's the tonic triad of D major, and because we are in second inversion, we write 6 and 4. This 6 and 4 represent second inversion. There's a fourth and there's a sixth. Let's move on to the next question. Now we are in C minor. Let's extract all the information from the chord. First, we need to write out the notes. I'm going to erase that so we have more room. G, or we have, it starts with an F, and then we have a G, a B natural, and a D. I have to rearrange this in thirds. So that's a third, but this is a second. So that's not right. How about if I move the F up here? Now it's a third. G to B is a third, B to D is a third, and D to F is a third. So G must be the root. So G is the root. Now what's the quality? There are 4 notes in this chord, so by definition it can't be a triad. It must be a 7th chord. And the only 2 7th chords we know are diminished 7th and dominant 7th. I know this is a dominant 7th because there's a major triad on the bottom and a minor 7th between the 2 outer notes. So now we have two out of the 3 pieces of information. G is the root, it's a dominant 7th chord. And the last piece of information is what inversion is it in. In the original question, F is in the bass. Now that's third inversion for a seventh chord. Now we can go ahead and write the root quality chord symbol. The root is G. The quality is a dominant seventh chord, and we represent that just with a seventh. And to show the inversion, we write G/over F. It's a G dominant seventh chord over F. Now the functional chord symbol. We have to depend on the key. G is the root and G is the dominant of C. So we need to write a Roman numeral 5. And it's going to be capital letter because that's what we use for dominant seventh chords. And now we have to show the inversion. What numbers and what figures do we use to show that this chord is in third inversion? We learned in level 7 that you write 4, 2. That looks more like a Z. So there's the functional chord symbol for this dominant seventh chord built on G. And the last one, we're in C sharp minor, and we have to extract all this information. We'll start by writing out the notes. We have a G sharp, and then a B sharp, and then an E. G sharp to B is a third, but B sharp to E is not a third. So if I rearrange this and bring the E down here, now we get the nice root position triad. So E must be the root. Now, what's the quality? Is it major, minor, augmented, or diminished? Let's see. E to G is a major third, and G sharp to B sharp is a major third. So this must be an augmented triad. And it's not in root position in the original question. G is in the bass, so that's first inversion. Okay, so here's all our information. Now let's write the root quality chord symbol. The root is E. The quality is augmented, and we represent that with a plus sign in root quality chord land. And because G sharp is the lowest note, we're over G sharp. E augmented over G sharp. Now let's write the functional chord symbol. Comparing the root to our key signature, E is the third note of a C sharp minor scale. So we're going to write Roman numeral 3. Since it's augmented, we have to write an uppercase Roman numeral 3. And because it's augmented again, we're going to put a plus sign beside the symbol. That represents augmented. And finally, to show the inversion, to show that G sharp, the third, is in the bass, we can write the figure 6. So that was a good example of how you analyze all these chords. There's tons of information. But you notice every time I did it, I wrote little notes to myself underneath the staff so I could see, and I could rearrange all the notes into root position. This is a lot easier than staring at the question when it's in an inversion and trying to interpret and figure out the root. It's easier if you just write out all your information on the side of the page, rearrange it a little bit so it's easier to see, and then take that information and put it in the question. You won't lose marks if on the corners of your exam there's lots of notes to yourself. In fact, I think your examiner would be quite impressed because he can see your thought process. So don't be afraid to write out the root position version of every chord you see somewhere else away from the question so that you can analyze it easy and then take what you've figured out and answer your question properly.